been fantastic so far. And we now have Ken from Rotronics, who's going to talk about things battery management. If you are around in the area and want to go and have a listen, batteries are obviously integral parts of a vehicle these days, even more so now than they ever have been. So hopefully Ken is going to give us some of these fantastic wisdom in this presentation. Yeah, all over to you, Ken.
Great, well thanks very much, and thanks for joining us this afternoon. So a bit of an intro for Rotronics, I guess. Rotronics is a specialist company dealing purely with batteries, so low voltage, high voltage batteries. But today's session is all about the low voltage side of batteries within vehicles and applications. So we tend to bring together the strength of many products, rather than just look at an isolation of one product or service provider. We look at a number of companies and product offerings that we can bring to the table and add value to you as users and to add on to your customers. So key customer programs for the Mechanex Sandown, Deep and Traction, our core partners, so we look at both testing, charging, diagnostic solutions to support workshop programs, to be proactive as opposed to reactive in workshop environments. To that end, we try and offer a solution that generates revenue and income streams through yourselves that you may not really recognise, or maybe in your workshop that you don't currently see. Okay, so markets we work in typically anywhere where there's 12-volt battery, so mainly OE, passenger truck, aftermarket applications, but anywhere with a low voltage application, our systems operate and can support drive battery management practices to prolong the life of batteries and minimise the risk of failure. Okay. I guess we put your business at the heart of our business in everything that we do. So we provide your workshop with the industry latest technology. So there are lots of testers, lots of chargers on the market. How do you decide which is the right one for your application? Which one fits your purse strings, and what will deliver the best benefit for your business. So we tend to work with you as an independent operator to say, what is your needs, and we work to put that solution, not just give you maybe what you think you need, but try and challenge what you need that product to do to maximise efficiencies and cost for your business as well. We deliver training support. So again, equal to this is not just a case of supplying you with equipment, you may know how to use it, it does your teams, how do you get the most out of it? So we can either visit your workshops or do a Teams call to enable you to actually understand physically what these test results mean and how to interpret them and how to engage with your customers so that you can convince them to invest in a charging program, a replacement, or a proactive approach to that cycle. Aftercare and support for your business as well. So we tend to look at, you buy the equipment once and it's maintained. So from our point of view, if you break it, damage it, or it needs a repair or an upgrade, we offer a 24-hour turnaround of that product, so you buy it once and never have to replace it again. All our products are upgradable, so with our testers in particular, they offer over-the-air updates which are free of charge for the lifetime of the product and support you with that. So it's about generating revenue, because clearly any investment you make within your business, you want to get a return on that investment. So our objective is to try and help you to maximise those opportunities to identify what batteries require replacement, charging with your workshop, and how do you turn that into cash. Yep. And giving you the visibility of how the program is working for you. So it's not just a case of, we say these things will add value and deliver results for your business, but how do we manage that? How do we deliver to those expectations? So all our test results are integrated into a system called Braidwitch, which is an online portal which seamlessly connects to your tester, so every test that's done uploads into that server to populate historical events and how your battery tests are performing. So if you buy a piece of equipment for your workshop, you'd hope it'll get used on every inspection service cycle that goes on. By doing that, we've got examples here later. I'll show you some maybe staggering information. You may already be aware of what goes on, but it gives you a bit of enlightenment to what actually goes on across the industry in terms of battery performance and what the risks and factors are associated with that. And from that, you can deliver true return on investments if you follow those processes. Simply buying a piece of equipment and stick it in the workshop, it's not going to do a great deal for you. It's our objective, if you're going to buy a piece of equipment from us, we want you to use it and get as much as you possibly can. Okay. So, how does that program work? So I suppose the first thing is to look at some industry statistics, I guess, really, to help us cement that process. So I've taken a snapshot from our database, which holds over 7 million test results and records from across the industry at the moment. I've taken the past 12 months data, which incorporates 1 million tests across all segments, so commercial, fleet, aftermarket, OE, etc., and dump that into a file, and we can see what that shows us. I guess so. What percentage of those million test results do you feel were tested as good to start with? Just to shout out a number, percentage-wise. 25%. Any offers above 25%? 40? Any advances on 40? No? Okay. 46%, so almost bang on to that. So 46% of vehicles that are tested on average are good. The batteries don't need attention, they don't need any charging. And that's quite staggering, because that says over 50% of batteries do then in that case. So, on the opposite side of that scale then, what percentage of batteries would you recommend would require replacement out of those million battery tests? Again, a rough number? %. Any advances on 15? Going once, going twice. 20%, there you go, sold. Right, the figure is actually 30%. So 1 in 3 vehicles entering a workshop, the battery requires replacement. And that's quite staggering, because that value is going up year on year. Since COVID, people are driving less miles, vehicle enhancements, technology is getting greater, demanding more power from that battery. Batteries are getting smaller. On electric vehicles now, it's all about space, weight, etc. So if you look at EVs these days, under the hood, the bonnet, the boot, wherever it may be, the batteries are getting smaller and smaller, but the demands placed on those batteries are getting massively, much more improved and increased. Okay. So overall, if you put that together now, those many results, you've got 46% that are good, 30% that need replacement, and 24% that need charging. And that charging is really our early warning sign. So most workshops have a habit of ignoring this factor here, 24%. No doubt all of you as workshop owners will have chargers in your workplace. Often they will get used if you need to do a diagnostic reprogramming, but seldom are they used to proactively charge a battery up if you do a test and you get this good recharge outcome. I guess, would that be a fair comment? No? You would do charging all the time? Great. I mean, quite often it's a case of it takes too long, there's nothing in it for me, where's the value add? But if we don't remedy it here, then it becomes one of these statistics. And we work with our sort of fleet operators and workshops proactively to look at that as a revenue stream as well, because if we enlighten the customer that there is a problem with the battery, there's a chance we can fix it and prevent that battery failing at least for this winter and maybe extend it by another year or more. And some of our programs have been proven to deliver increased battery performance by up to 2 or 3 years. And that's significant for a fleet, for an independent customer, I guess. They don't care it either works or it doesn't, I guess, but if we can identify the opportunity up front, at least make them aware of that, they're less likely to come knocking on your door 2 days later. Go on. You're right. Yeah. And you're right, and what he was saying, if you can't hear him, we're saying that, the challenge is educating the customer. They've got a problem with a battery that needs rectifying, and even if it's a replace decision, because with all of these testers, they can't give you a date and time that battery's going to fail. And that's our challenge in the industry, I guess. It says we know it's only going to go one way. And that's the beauty of some of the data that we operate with. If you're testing a battery at regular intervals, you can see the gradual decline over time. And our database does enable you to do that, so it helps you drive that methodology to the customer, because in their eyes it works or it doesn't work, and that's the mentality the industry has as a whole. Generally, over the past 20 years I've worked in this particular sector, batteries are treated as a consumer item. It works or it doesn't work. If it's flat, in some operators they take the battery out, put a new set on, and they throw them in the bin. And that's great if you're not paying for it, but someone is down the line. So overall that means that 54% of batteries or vehicles that are coming into a workshop has a problem. It's about to happen or is getting worse. Batteries that are flat that coming into a workshop do not recover by themselves. Some people advise just run the engine, drive it for a 20-mile journey. It does nothing other than burn fuel. The only way to recover these batteries is by charging. And that's it. Simple as that. Okay. So if we look further then, so battery-related defects remain the most common breakdown defect in the industry, and that's irrespective of whether it's for an IC vehicle, even electric vehicles. The most common fault at roadside is the low voltage battery going flat. So it's not an issue that's going away, it's always been there, and we seem to keep bouncing our heads against a brick wall to try and resolve it. 1 in 3 vehicles, as you say, entering your workshop requires charging. So how do we maximise that opportunity? Well, you can do it as good customer service, or you can look at that as a revenue stream. If you can enlighten your customer, educate them, and that's the key, it says your battery's in need of attention, failure to do so will mean it will prematurely fail, Batteries no longer cost you £50 to replace. You're probably looking at labour of more than that with some of these batteries where they're fitted. So trying to give the customer the heads up that says there is a problem developing within your battery, it's only going to get worse. Now everyone knows that with your mobile phone you charge them up every night. If only that can happen with a 12-volt battery in a car, you know. I guess the question there is, how many of you actually proactively charge batteries, I guess? You've probably all got some form of testing facility, I guess. But if you get a good recharge decision, just a quick hands up, how many of you would actually charge that battery up if it needed charging? Okay. What would be the reason that you wouldn't do it, I guess? Customer won't let you. Right. Yeah. Anybody else why you wouldn't charge a battery up, I guess? Time could be an issue. There's nothing in it for me, I guess, because that's the other argument, isn't it? I didn't fit the battery, why should I have to maintain it? You could have the attitude, I want the bloody thing to fail, you know, so I can replace it. The only downside, if we don't identify these issues early, is that the customer could come back on you the following day if there's a non-start. I've just paid you £300 for my service, the car won't start, what did you do wrong? You know, they blame you for it, because it's not their fault, of course, you know. So by giving that customer the awareness that says there is a problem, you've chosen not to accept their advice or allow us to charge it up. For charging, we should be charging a fee for that, you know. You wouldn't let a vehicle leave your workshop with a flat tyre, but with a battery we do, because technically we get away with it, and also the customer is none the wiser until it bites them in the backside. Okay. So 1 in 3 vehicles in your workshop has a failing battery, I guess. So the question there, I guess, is, are we testing everything that comes into your workshop? We've got a case study that I'll go through in a bit. So if you test every vehicle that comes into your workshop, you will see the same results. And this is just an instance of one workshop we've homed in on to do the day. He's just like yourselves. He's got a couple of days. He's testing vehicles as part of the MOT, the service, or adult servicing to identify a problem. Now, he's not going to replace a battery every time, but the more you identify, the more you make your customers aware that there is an imminent problem, or actually, today there is no problem with your battery. But in 12 months' time when they come in and you say the same again, and the third year round, there is a problem, they're more than likely to understand that, okay, I need to take advice from you. You're the expert at the end of the day, but all too often the consumer now becomes the expert when it comes to parting with cash, don't they, you know? So, thing to think about. So I guess the program really, we utilise the latest technology. There are lots of products on the market, there's no doubt about that. They're all based around conductance testing. So you look at the CCA of the battery and how we measure that against what the battery's giving us. And that's a traditional way of doing it. But if you look at modern day vehicles, whilst the battery technology has changed slightly from moving to standard traditional lead acid to enhanced flooded batteries, AGM product, we now use that battery much more for its consumer power, not just can it start a vehicle. When you look at electric vehicles, it doesn't start anything, it just provides power. It's a backup system. So with the product we've got here, which is the CBX 900, it has instantly an automatic surface charge removal process, so instantly when a vehicle comes in, it's going to have a higher voltage unless you take that load off. Traditional testers will ask you to apply a load to put the headlights on, blowers, whatever, to take that off. This one does it in a controlled way. We also combine conductance with reserve capacity testing. So that enables us now only not to check the cranking ability of the vehicle, but actually what the reserve capacity is of the batteries as well. And that's quite an important feature of modern day vehicles. When you've got customers that will say, right, my stop-start doesn't work anymore, or conductance testing may not pick it up, depending on how bad the battery is. But with the reserve capacity test, you could get a situation where it's fine on cranking, but will fail it on the reserve health. And that gives you another reason to explain to the customer why it's not just a quick test, but there is a problem here that's developing, and it could be this side or it could be that side, it could fail on both counts. But we can be sure that if there's a problem, it's only going to go downhill. In addition to that, we use a profile called DBT, which is a discharge battery test. So this takes into account and measuring the charge acceptance of the battery. So if you get a charge and retest decision in a workshop environment or roadside, that's no good to man or beast. It just says, I'm unsure about the test result, I need to charge it up first to understand what does the charge acceptance look like. Is it going to recover if I charge it up? Do I need to spend 2 or 3 hours trying to charge a battery up only to find out it's not working anyway? So this process runs that 5-minute process to measure the charge acceptance. And it will then retest the battery and then give you a definitive outcome. It's either good and it needs charging, or it's a failed battery. Okay. We are also looking at incorporating an EV low voltage battery technology in there, and that will come out in Q1 next year, which will be a specific auxiliary test for low voltage EV batteries where it can sort of check the DC to DC charge acceptance of the battery as well. Over-the-air wireless updates, so that means it's a two-way process, so data goes into the portal, also you get live updates as they occur. And they will come out probably several times a year, and those are all free as part of the process. We also capture the important data like the vehicle registration number, so that enables to pinpoint in the database the regularity of tests that's been done, but also that you can show a profile to your customers. If you've got customers that are low mileage users, every time they bring it in for a service the battery's flat, why not offer them a refresh service every 3 months? Come in and do a free battery health check. You might charge them £5 to charge a battery up, and every time that vehicle comes in and it's down at 12.2, 11.9 volts, it's dying a death, and it's going to fail very much prematurely. So to further sort of detect that issue and remove it from being a problem, if you can regularly maintain that battery for the customer, A, you're going to pick up other opportunities that exist anyway, but you're going to get also that customer recognising that you're doing the right thing for them. Most people wouldn't know where the battery is, let alone how to charge the thing. So if you can offer that advice for them, it may well be you charge a normal £5 fee for it, or a £10 fee, and give it as a credit back to them if they need a replacement battery in the future. These are ways that you can use the tester to market your business. Never look at that tool as just, oh, it's a tester. It's a spanner is a spanner for sure. But a tester is designed as a marketing tool, a sales tool for you to enable you to convince the customer to do the right thing, and we're doing it accurately as best we can. And there's credibility in this data, so we've got over 7 million results here now, and the facts speak for themselves for sure. Obviously, all that connects into the Robust portal as well to give that information and ability. So again, as you said earlier on, convincing the customer there is a problem, we need to simplify and educate the customer in a different form than just give them a little like Tesco's receipt that says, your battery needs replacing, please give me £300, yeah? It doesn't look very convincing. So what we try and do here, we take the data from the tester, and rather than give you a little printout, we compile a report like this that gives you the ability to put your workshop name and address, your logo on there. You can attach it to a job sheet, or you can email this format to the customer. And we use a very simple traffic light system, so everyone knows what a traffic light looks like, you know. Red means there's a problem, amber, there's a problem building up, green, I'm happy to go. So we denote on here whether it's red, amber or green, and that could be it's failed on cranking ability, and the first one on reserve capacity, or there's no problem at all, you know. So it's very easy. We give a statement in there for the customer to understand it. What is reserve capacity? If you say that to your customer, your reserve capacity is not good, they go, what's it about? So we explain what that means. So it helps some of your technicians that are learning this process as well, because there also is an education for technicians sometimes. It's not just good or bad, there is that grey area in between that means there is a problem developing that we need to try and rectify. Okay, so it's clearly customer friendly, and that data is stored. So again, every time that customer comes in, we're building up a profile. So you can start understanding how long is that battery likely to last for that customer. We could try and get to a predictive state going forward. If we know that this battery, this vehicle lasts for 6 months, 8 months, 12 months before it needs charging, you can offer that service and process to the customer proactively by emailing and saying, hey, it's about to be coming in for a recharge or retest. Why not? It's value add for you, and all it takes is a phone call or an email. So it's thinking a little bit differently on how we look at batteries in the future, and how people then can more depend on you as a provider of an expert service to help them never get a breakdown again. Now the last thing we want to do is see our customers break down at roadside, for sure. Okay, so again, charging and power supply, you know, what do you need? And this is quite there's a lot of discussions that have been had just at the show this week about, you know, we need a 100 amp power supply, we need this supply, we need that supply. I'm confused over it. I'm sure you guys are as well to a degree. This is just a typical example. If we put all the loads on a typical vehicle these days, you're pulling over 400 amps. But you're never going to use that in any application, because you'll kill off any power supply you need. You need to put in a gigawatt power supply to support this. But it just gives a quick and dirty overview of the demands that are pulled on a modern day vehicle. Now you're never going to put all these systems on at once. So in terms of diagnostics and power supply, yes, there are requirements for minimum standards, but the considerations, I guess, are, you know, time equals more amps, I guess, really. So if you haven't got time, if you get charges typically, the greater the charge current, the quicker the charger can be in terms of recovering that battery up. But that's not always the case. A battery, I suppose, is a little bit like a human being. You can give him a 3-course meal sat in front of you, but he's not going to wolf it down in 2 seconds. It's only as big as a hole in his mouth. You know, that's similar with a battery. A battery is, if you suddenly give them 100 amps charge current, they'll never take it. And if they do it in a very short space of time, and if you force that current into them, you'll turn it into film and run away and you can damage the plates anyway. So for us it's about looking at the right spot that gives the battery what it needs to recover in a sufficient time. Now if you look online, there's lots of things that are low and slow is the best way to charge it. That used to be the old days. We haven't got time these days to do those sort of things. And modern technologies don't need to be charged in that way. We can put a boost charge into a battery in 45 minutes an hour. A typical service will take you 45 minutes to an hour. If a battery's at 12.4, 12.5 volts, to recover up to 12.7, it isn't going to take you more than an hour anyway. So in reality, we're trying to remove some of the excuses about why I cannot charge a battery up. And I get it if there's nothing in it for you, but if you've got a ramp you're taking up space and you've got a charger free, there's nothing wrong with hooking it up and giving a bit of value add for your customer. Even if you don't charge for it, it's a benefit for them, if nothing else, and something that some of your competitors may not even bother doing. So really, state of charge and health of the battery determines how long it takes to charge a battery up. We already know that 24% of batteries that are on vehicles that come into your workshop will need charging. And that could be they're below 12.5, 12.4, they could be at 11.9 and just creeping into the workshop. If you've had it in the workshop for a couple of days, some of you might have body shops. It's another industry that really is in need of some sort of charging processing programs to maintain batteries when you're doing work. If you're opening up doors, you're putting quite a bit of current from batteries. If it's already in a depleted state, it's going to get worse. If you're not recovering that battery, you're leaving it with the customer with a potential problem down the line. Batteries will only accept what it will accept. You've got a 100 amp hour battery, a 200 amp hour battery. Typically, we've only seen, even look at a commercial battery, say 220 amp hours, it's only going to accept 50 amps charge current for a small amount of time. Then it drops down to 40 amps, 30 amps, 20 amps. The last sort of 5% of the battery takes the longest. Now, in an ideal world, you recover a battery to 100%. You're never going to do that unless you've got the vehicle in overnight and you're going to keep it for as long as it needs to be. But you don't have to do that. Batteries, if you get them to about 80% state of charge, that's good enough because the charging system will recover the battery to some degree, depending on the drive cycle, the usage, the time of year, the temperature. But if we can add a little bit to top that battery up, every time it's dropping down, we can recover it a bit more. So it certainly helps by looking at that need. So I guess the question for you in terms of your charging in your workshop, what time have you got? Have you got the desire to do it? And have you got the capability to do it as well? Your bays may be very, very tight. You might want to get power supply to them, or you want to get it in and out. But these things shouldn't be neglected. If you can do anything to try and maximise charging where you possibly can. Power supplies, do I need 100 amps or more? And the answer is yes and no, I guess. Really, it depends on the application and what you need. But we talk to a lot of manufacturers. Even often, there's some confusion over what do we need for power supply. One of the areas really, if a battery is in a low state of charge to start with, and we know that nearly 30% are, if you're doing any downloads or upgrades and the battery's really low, you need that massive power supply because the battery's not going to cope with it. But if you imagine that a fairly fully charged battery at 12.72 has only got 65, 70, 85 amps in it, so you've got quite a lot of power there. We just need to keep it maintained with a power supply unit. A lot of manufacturers aren't specifying minimum standards of 100 amps. We're seeing manufacturers looking at 50 amps, 60 amps, not this massive 100 amps required at all times, So it very depends on what you're going to do. I mean, if you're wheeling around electric seats and programming those, you're going to pull a lot of current. Depends on what you're actually doing with it, but this sort of requirement of 100 amps is required at all times is certainly not the case. I'm not really experienced in the work we've done as well. I'm trying to build up a catalogue of which vehicle requires what current, and that's taken quite a painful process to get through. But hopefully at some point we're going to present back and say, right, these are the vehicles and this is the power demand you need for a power supply unit. But it takes time to get some of that information. But 50 amps are pretty much sufficient for most of the applications that are out there. Okay. Support, I guess, the other thing to consider if you're buying that equipment is what support can you get. If it fails, you get a problem with it, or you want technical advice. And those are things that we are proud that we can offer customers. Cost and benefits, returns on investment, anything you invest in, you want to make sure that I can recover my cost, it adds value, and it's got to be at the right price. So we try and cover all those things. We're not always going to be the most competitive, but we'll give you the right solution that meets your needs. And it's up to you whether you take it or leave it, I guess. But we try and offer you what you actually need to support your business and make it more viable and profitable. Okay.